You're listening to the Coach Hodge and Banks Show on the Coaching, Culture, and Athletics Radio Broadcast Network. Sit back and enjoy the show. Please note, the views and opinions discussed in this podcast aren't necessarily the opinions of the host and or Coach Hodge and Banks Show on the Coaching and Culture Athletics Network.
All right, everybody. Hey, I want to welcome you to another rendition of Coaching, Culture, and Athletics. We're going to work on a new intro so you don't hear just the Coach Hodges and Coach Banks show. Tonight, I have, Coach Evan Swanson back in the gauntlet with me, the co-host. And you know what? We have a very special guest. You know what? They always say everything's bigger in Texas. Well, we're going to find out tonight if it is. And I'm sure it is. But anyway, we have Coach Marvin Nash. He is entering his 15th year of coaching. He was a standout safety and linebacker at Austin College in Sherman, Texas. As a coach, he has coached nearly every position. Coach Nash has coached in public schools his entire career at Wakeland High School, Denton Guyer High School, and as offensive coordinator at Crosby High School. He is happily married to his wife, Schavaun, of 16 years. The couple are blessed with 3 beautiful kids, Reagan, 15, Damon, 13, Trey, 8. The family shares the love for Jesus Christ and a strong belief that it is important to have a servant heart. Do more for others than you do yourself. That's Jeremiah 29:11. Coach Nash is also the host of the iCoach podcast, and we'll just say this right now. It is CCA approval.
Yes,
you know what I'm saying.
It's a great podcast to listen to when you have some downtime. So, happy for y'all to join us again tonight. Let's get this started.
All right, Coach Nash, we appreciate you coming on. Sometimes the bio sounds like kind of an obituary, but it's not, is it, brother?
Not at all. Not at all. It very much speaks life and not death at all. Thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, we appreciate it, and it's always fun to go over the state lines, to talk about, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, whatever, and even girls basketball, girls track, because we are looking for those sports as well. Now, I want to hear your story, Coach, because it sounds pretty amazing, and it's remarkably similar, because I kind of got into this coaching thing late as well.
Absolutely. I'll take it all the way back. Way back when I was coming up in a small town in Texas, New Waverly, Texas, and I was an only child. My father wasn't present in my life, and all I had was my mom, and she encouraged me through everything that I decided to do. Coincidentally, she was my elementary principal. She was my middle school principal. And so I was always kind of getting in trouble, kind of not getting in trouble. Well, fast forward through high school. Around my junior year, she gets diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And, I really didn't have a lot of people to lean on. But my coaches filled that void. And so when I think back of the most influential men in my life, it was the coaches that coached me in high school and my coaches in college. Definitely my head coach in college, Coach David Norman. They looked out for me. They taught me things that I otherwise wouldn't have known as a young man growing up. And by the grace of God, my mom beat cancer. But through those 4 or 5 years that she was fighting it was coaches that kept me going. So as I graduated college and I played football, had a great time with it, I got into banking. And so I worked with Countrywide Home Loans. And up until about the time in 2008, when the market took a tremendous downturn, the company actually went under, I decided I need to do something different. So I got into coaching. I was teaching 6th grade PE and coaching middle school football. And it was the most rewarding experience of my life. The way I approach it is how I approach everything. It's just be who I needed when I was younger. I can think back of when I was struggling and when I needed help, and that's how I go approach each and every day. And that was way back when, and it's still going strong today.
I have to go back to this this post that you posted. I think it was in the last 24 hours, and you said no one is realer than me. Can you explain that?
Absolutely. It's you put me anywhere, I'm the realest person in the room, and it's because people can see my genuineness. My kids in my classes. Most recently, I taught economics and government, and they walk in every day and they look at me and say, "Why is he always smiling?" And it's a genuine feeling. It's because I represent and live everything that I believe. So put me in any situation, I'm going to be the most genuine person in the room. And it's not a competition. I'm not saying that I'm more genuine than anybody else, but I know 100% of the time you're getting Coach Nash, who I am, the real me.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, I haven't known you that long. I haven't had the opportunity to meet you face to face, but I got a feeling that I will in the future. Now, we are facing a crisis in sports, athletics, whether it's Pee Wee all the way to the to the pros. And in order to build a culture, I personally believe in non-negotiables. Do you have any non-negotiables, Coach, that you just absolutely that you're going to follow, and that's your foundation within the culture of your program?
Absolutely. One rule: be where you're supposed to be, doing what you're supposed to be doing at the appropriate time you're supposed to be doing it. It's one rule. It encompasses everything. So, hey, if I'm not at practice on time, then I'm breaking the rule. I'm not where I'm supposed to be. If I'm talking while the coach is talking, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. And it makes it simple because all of the kids I coach, they agree to it. They say, okay, that sounds fair. I'm going to be where I'm supposed to be. I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to be on time when I get there. I'm not going to be late. And by enforcing that in everything we do, we kind of create the culture where the kids police themselves. It all stems from if you're not coaching it, you're allowing it to happen. So we have to stay on them every single time. It doesn't matter how small or how menial it might be. We have to go ahead and enforce that rule, and that rule is the biggest non-negotiable because it makes everybody be on one accord. We know what the expectation is, and it keeps the main thing, which is doing what's right.
Now, it looks like Coach Swanson wants to ask a question, so I'm going to let him.
I think that's impressive, non-negotiable to have an impressive mindset. How do your kids that you might say are leaders or captains help reinforce that non-negotiable? Do they take any certain steps outside of just your everyday players where you hold them accountable to it?
Absolutely. This has been the non-negotiable since the very beginning, and so I've seen kids that I've had they see another kid that's not even a part of the team, but in the lunchroom acting up, or in their classroom. They may not even be involved with sports, but they understand that it's their place to say something because the culture is the culture, and if you don't reinforce the culture, then you lose the culture. And I hate saying the C word. I hate saying culture because it's more of a buzzword now. We don't see people truly being held accountable for it, but it's who you are. And so if we are who we are, we can't be somebody different when we're in the classroom. You can't be one way in front of coach and then one way in front of your parents and then one way at church and then one way hanging out with your friends. Be you. Make your no's mean no's and your yeses mean yeses, and be real. Because I try to model that every single day just by being myself. And hopefully the kids see it. And so far, so good.
Now, you've been coaching a long time, so have I. But and Coach Swanson, not a long time yet.
Not that long yet.
When you look at this buzzword culture, what is one thing that can destroy a culture without us even seeing it?
It is the adults that are put in charge of enforcing it. So this is my biggest example. One thing we want as teachers is we love classroom management. We love our kids to stay engaged while we're up front teaching, and we hate when kids have the little side conversations or texting while you're talking. And then we get into our staff development meetings, and it's the same teachers that dislike it so much in their classrooms doing it in front of the presenter. And so the biggest thing is hypocrisy, because kids can see if you're not being who you say you are. Kids can see if you're not living how you say you should live. And I think the whole do as I say, not as I do, that expired a long time ago. Kids are smarter these days. I know everybody says kids haven't changed, and it's the people that have. No, I think kids have changed. I think they've grown. I think they're more mature. I think they're a lot smarter than they were back in my day. Or maybe I was just a dumb kid who made dumb choices. I'm not sure. But it's one of those things that you have to be who you say you are. Because if kids see that you're not who you say you are and feel like there's no recourse for anything that you have set in front of them to do, then they just won't do it. There's no incentive.
That's wonderful. That's a great way. I like the fact that, and I agree with you, the fact that culture kind of gets overplayed and it's a word that's just kind of been used and now has no meaning to it. So take us through a little bit, kind of what your season looks like. What are some of your important daily routines that you have as a coach, if you have any? What are some game day rituals? Are you superstitious? Just some of the things like that make you who you are throughout your coaching adventure.
Absolutely. I know for me, just as a coach, no matter where I've been, I always say I'm your favorite coach's favorite coach just because I'm the guy in the coach's office who's always making jokes and movie references. I love movies. So you might just hear a random line from, I don't know, The Godfather or Wedding Crashers, or it could be anything. I'm that guy that keeps everybody laughing just because I like to have a good time. My game day ritual is kind of weird. I try to do something different every single game day, just so I'm not superstitious depending on something. And so that's become my superstition. I think the very first big playoff win we ever had, I wore black, I think it was black Nike socks. And so the next playoff game, I wore like red socks or something that wasn't even our school color. But you couldn't see it because I was wearing pants. But I just did something completely different, so I wouldn't say, okay, I have to do this every single time. And so in the spirit of trying to stay away from being superstitious, I think I made it worse.
Now, Coach, when that on switch hits, when that ball is kicked off from the 40-yard line and this game is starting, how are you different?
Oh, how I just told you how I'm the guy that likes to laugh and joke in the locker room and the coach's office. I am a madman when the ball is kicked. So I think one of my kids referred to me as Bruce Banner in the classroom and the Incredible Hulk on the field.
Are you sure we're not related?
We just might be, Coach. I completely lose my mind, and I'm the loudest with the good stuff. So if we just made a huge play, there's a clip that one of my kids sent me from our huddle video, and he said, "This is my coach." And we made a great play. We were playing in the Star, which is we'll get into this a little bit, but the Texas facilities are amazing. So we got to play our rival at the Cowboys practice facility, which is like an indoor mini Cowboys stadium. It holds 14,000 people, big video screens, and it's completely indoor. So it's like playing in a dome, but for high school. So it fills up. It's an incredible experience. So we made a huge play on fourth down. We stopped them. I was coaching DNs at the time. One of my DNs made just a remarkable play, ran a guy down from behind on a double reverse pass and forced a fumble. And before you know it, I chest bump one, and I take my headset off, and I completely headbutt the next guy. I don't even remember it, but he's like, "Coach, I thought you were going to knock yourself out." He said, I've never seen anything like that before. But it's just pure, just unfiltered enthusiasm and love that I have seeing kids that you pour into all week make a great play, and then just love for the game in general. Now,
Coach Swanson, you want to tell him what I'm like?
Yeah, it's tough because he's my JV coach, and we had a rough basketball season this year, and I'm a very competitive person too. I'm quite vocal on the sidelines, but anytime I get a little riled up or worked up, he always has some smart aleck comment to say, something like that I just can't help but bust out laughing with. I'd probably lose my mind last season if it wasn't for him on my sidelines.
Back to football. Sometimes, I'm so passionate on the sidelines as well, and I can only imagine what's going on, with you as well. Have you ever had whether it's a hostile situation like with another one of your coach or with a head coach because you disagreed or something like that, or you were loud and that particular coach took it the wrong way?
It's kind of funny, and maybe it's just the staffs that I've been a part of, But we do so much preparation during the week that those situations are already decided. Even as an offensive coordinator, okay, it's 4th and 2. We scripted so focused that we have 3 plays that we'll call on that 4th and 2: a run, a pass, and then a play action pass. And so we look around and say play action or run, and we all agree. We say, okay, let's go with the run. We get the first down on it. It's situations like that happen more often than not. But I mean, there has been situations where I think we should go for it, and head coach says no, and that's when I stopped being big and green, and I turned into David to Banner and put my glasses on, and I shut my mouth. And I don't know how I was able to control that, but I have been. And usually that's what happens. Whoever is the whistle in charge, what they say goes. So that works. Yeah,
and that's something that I definitely learned along the way, with my coaching philosophy as well. And I think that maybe being in that business management, at a years ago, which is a different life, of course, sometimes that ego gets hurt, and I'll be the first to admit. And any coach out there, make sure that you listen to that, because what Coach Nash is saying is very important. If you're the assistant and the head guy in charge has the whistle, then ultimately that head guy or head gal, they're the general, they're the field wardens.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It was explained to me this way one time when I was wondering why my opinion wasn't being taken more into account, and he said, look, if something good happens, that's everybody. It's a great team. But if something bad happens, that's a direct reflection to the head coach. So it's nothing personal when those decisions are being made. It's the person who's going to bear all the burden of the negativity if it does go south. And once he said that, I got it. It made sense.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So what are, throughout your coaching career, what are some of the more frustrating moments that you've encountered, and how have you dealt with them?
Probably early on. Early in my career, which is I was at a middle school program. It fed what eventually became a state championship team, but it was a brand new school in Texas. And with most brand new schools, you're not very good the first few years. You're playing with freshmen and sophomores against full staff varsity teams that are mainly seniors. And so as we're there and we're coaching and doing what we do, we had a rough first year. It was 0-10. A rough second year. That was 1-9. And the most frustrating thing was having the kids that gave up a little bit, that thought, we'll never be any good. Because the very next year we went to the state semifinals. We won 14 games. It can happen that quick. So seeing kids give up on themselves before they are even who they're going to be is very, very frustrating for me, because sometimes you believe in them more than they believe in themselves.
Yeah, and I think that happens again and again and again.
Yeah, that's what we've kind of experiencing here in Iowa. The past couple seasons, they've been kind of rough. Football 0-9, boys basketball 2-17, and you see kids where they just kind of give up at some point, or they just don't want to put in the work, or they're just kind of frustrated with the whole thing. Which if the kids are frustrated, we all know the coaches are frustrated too.
And as well as I do, Coach, when you're underachieving, that's what drives a coach nuts.
Ooh, yes. Yeah, big time. When you have all the talent in the world and guys just show up and go through the motions at practice and then think it's going to reflect something different on game night, that's a very frustrating situation. I've been blessed to not have that many teams. We may, falter from week to week depending on where we're at, but usually – it all goes back to, again, that C word, culture. Your culture tells you to do what you're supposed to do, so you won't take practice for granted. And the result you get on Friday night is going to be a lot different.
Yeah, and if you're listening, Iowa athletes, and I'm sure that we have a few listening. We have many that follow us. We'll get into the difference between Iowa and Texas here in just a few moments. I want to spend a little bit of time, talking about Texas football, because up in Iowa, even the 4A coaches, they're like, oh, you have no clue what Texas football is all about. But we'll get into that in just a few moments. Coach Nash, how do you deal with the mad parent?
I don't know if I'm blessed or what, but I am very good with the parents. And I think it's because I'm a straight shooter. If you're upset about playing time, then I'll tell you why your kid's not playing. And then we'll just talk facts. And sometimes I hurt some feelings, but it always ends up okay because I'm very tactful in the way I speak, because at the end of the day, we love our kids. Everybody just wants the best for their child. And being a father of three, I can totally relate to that. Not all three of my kids are the greatest athletes in the world. They work really, really hard to earn the opportunity. So if I have a young man or a young lady that's working hard at whatever sport we're coaching, and the parents are upset because of playing time, it just needs to be explained simply. And if I can't explain why they're not playing and they're just not playing, then I need to check myself. That's when I need to go look in the mirror and see what the problem is. And I think that may be, to answer your question, what makes it a little bit easier for me to handle the mad and upset parent is because I always look inwardly first and look at myself and see what I could do better before I say, well, so-and-so is disrespectful or so-and-so shows up late. Well, what did I do as a coach to help them be successful? And at the end of the day, it's about being a servant. It's about having a servant heart, because I'm here to serve these kids. And I'm here to serve their families. I'm here to serve this whole community that I coach for. It's never about me trying to win a game. The winning is just a byproduct.
And I really appreciate you saying that. Servant leadership, I tell you, I've had a lot of great coaches over the years, and ultimately the best coaches were, they definitely pushed that servant leadership title. Now, as far as your head coach and the program all in general, what is the hierarchy as far as a parent? What are the non-negotiables, for parents and the player when it comes to playing time and this, that, and the other?
The big thing that is the non-negotiable is never approach a coach directly after a game. Everybody needs a cooling off period. Because if you go poke me with the stick right after a tough loss, you'll probably still get the hook. You won't get me. So you don't want that. We want to have a good civil conversation. So never approach, win or lose, never approach a coach right after the game, because we're trying to take care of all the athletes, not just your one child in particular. So that's probably the first non-negotiable. And the second one is, this is more for coaches and parents. I must keep my door open. When I was an OC and an assistant head coach, my assistants keep your door open, but we want to be the buffer zone to the head coach. If there's an issue, say with a receiver, and he needs to go to the receivers coach first. And if they can't work it out, then come get the OC and we'll both sit down with you and we'll see if we can work it out with the receiver and the parents. And as a last straw, we'll take it to the head coach. But there's a million things that the head coach has to take care of. And dealing with personality conflicts or misunderstandings should not be one of them.
That's a great hierarchy to have. Do you ever have any parents that try to skip that and go straight to the head coach, or is your hierarchy pretty much intact and your parents follow it pretty well?
Oh, throughout my career, I've had people go directly to the superintendent.
Yeah.
And I think that happens everywhere. They think, well, I want answers now and I want my way now, so I'm going to go to the top. And usually what happens is it gets filtered by an administrative assistant, and it comes back down to the head coach, and the head coach comes back to the OC, and the OC finds a position coach and says, hey, can you take care of this real quick? And if you need help, just let me know. So going to the top doesn't do a whole lot, except it may delay it a little bit more than what it should.
Yeah, I tell you, we went from the helicopter parent to the lawnmower parent, now to the snowplow parent.
Yes, big time.
Oh, yeah, it's escalated pretty quickly. So I got a question about you. Being a father of 3 kids, and they play their respective sports. When you're in the stands watching your kids play or after the game, do you take more of the parent role where you're consoling them, talking to them, or do you take more of the coaching role in that aspect?
Oh, my goodness. Well, starting with while they're playing, I can't sit in the stands. I have to go stand against a wall in a corner away from people. And it's for their own sake and it's for my sake. But the thing that probably burns me up ever, because my kids, especially my boys, my 13-year-old, he's in middle school, and then my young one plays youth sports. And a lot of the youth sports coaches are volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
And so you hear people saying, why are you calling this play? Why are you doing this? I'm like, oh, my gosh, let the coach, let the players play, and parents, why don't you just parent? So I go parent. I go stand off to the side so I don't have to hear any berating of a coach, whether I agree what they're doing or what they're not doing. I know for a fact that they're not trying to lose the game. I know for a fact that they're doing the very best they can. So I stay away. I get away. And then after the game, the only thing I'll say is I love watching you play, and I'm very proud of you. You know, win, lose, whatever.
And that's great. I'm glad you said that. I think too many times, especially at the high school level anymore, kids ride the bus home with their parents when they get home. I mean, I know some kids that go through film sessions with their parents. You did this on this play, you didn't do this, you should have done this. And I don't think we have enough parents anymore that tell their kids, you know what, no matter win, loss, how many points you scored, didn't score, whatever, I just thoroughly enjoyed watching you play. Because I think parents take for granted how little time they actually have to watch their kids play.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And another point to that is that's what I usually say after every game. The only time I say something different is if they're not trying their best. Because that's a non-negotiable in every part of my life, from coaching to teaching to being a parent, and even for myself. Do your very best. So if like my middle son, if he's not getting back on defense, running back, I'll ask him, did you try your hardest? And he's a very honest kid. He'll say, I was kind of tired, so I was a little lazy on defense here or there. And I say, well, I would appreciate if you gave everything you had, because there's some people who pray for just the opportunity to play the game that you're playing. And that kind of wakes them up.
Great point.
I'll tell you what, Coach. Myself growing up, my oldest daughter is about 6 years older than my son and 10 years older than my youngest. I have definitely changed as a coach, and she did a wonderful job. Ended up playing Division II softball. Had a great career, several home runs. But a lot of the things that I did is I'm trying to promote awareness as to not. How to not do things, learning from my past transgressions, because I was that vocal guy. And there were times that, we did that. And then later on in her career, I kind of stepped back, and she was upset. But I said, you need to be coached by someone else other than me, especially at the varsity level if you're going to be playing in college. And then what I did is I planted my happy butt out in center field away from everybody so no one could hear me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I actually went through something similar with my youngest son. He plays flag football. We're not at the tackle stage yet by any means, but he got to the point where he's only responding to my voice, and that's not good. I want my kids to respect every coach they have and listen to what they have to say, and not just feel like you do it because my dad knows this, my dad knows that. No, it's not about that. It's about you understanding how to take direction and being coachable, because being coachable as a kid means that when you become an adult, you'll be a coachable employee, or you'll be a coachable father who knows, maybe I didn't do something I needed to do, or be a coachable husband. So it helps you to be the best person that you can be. So I'm with you on that.
And in the coaching ranks, we're constantly learning. That's that's one thing. If you think you know it all as a coach,
you know nothing.
It's probably time to hang it up.
I agree 100%.
Go ahead.
So let's talk about some football in the state of Texas. So your off-season programs in Texas, how do you guys run them? Are they mandatory? Do you have a lot of kids show up? How do you break down your off-season programs? Iowa here is completely different. So I'm just curious how you guys do it.
Well, off-season is really with my first job. That's what changed the C word, the culture of what we do. The head coach there, fantastic guy. He instilled in the kids the importance of being there for lifts. Even though they're voluntary, we still expect you to be there, because coaches are making the effort to get up and open the weight room for you and just let you get after it. Then we want you to be there. We encourage you to be there. And, once you get your leaders bought in, then they bring everybody with them. We were also, at that program I was blessed with some of the best strength coaches in the world. One of them just won the CSCS regional coach of the year for strength and conditioning, and he's a high school guy. He was going against professional guys, going up against college guys, and he won the whole region area for that. The other guy went through Texas high school football coaching and worked every strength and conditioning program that he was at. And now he's one of the assistants at the University of Oklahoma for strength and conditioning. So I was just blessed with an abundance of knowledge and the science that goes into working hard. So you work hard, but you also work smart. And I think that may be what separates Texas from others is that we invest in that. The school I'm at now, we have a full-time strength and conditioning coach for all of our athletic programs. And so that's what they do. They don't teach a class. They teach strength and conditioning, and they run all of our off-season programs. And it's when I say it is to the T what athletes need, it's tailored to them individually by their weights, by their expected gains. We have everybody's maxes. The percentages are on point. We teach Olympic lifts, and it's taught correctly. It's taught well. And so that just gives us a kind of a leg up on other people. And now every district in Texas almost has a strength and conditioning coach if you're a 5A or 6A program.
That's impressive. So how do you handle the kids that, they might be talented, they might be gifted athletes that don't show up to weights, or they show up, maybe 50% of the time? Are there any consequences you guys have in place?
Oh, big time. Usually it's a stern conversation for me, especially if they're in my position group or if they're a part of the offense. And if not, the head coach or defensive coordinator takes care of stuff as well. But it's expected for most programs in Texas, and definitely everyone that I've ever been at. Your best players, you coach them harder than anybody else. Because just because you're gifted, that should give you that much more incentive to try to be the very best that you can be, because you don't know how good you can be. If you're out here and you're dominating and you don't pick up a weight, what happens when you do? And it opens the eyes for a lot of guys. I've seen guys who come in as freshmen who don't want to touch a weight, and then they go on and buy into the weight program, and 2 years later, they're dominating in a Power 5 school. It happens every day. I think the main thing is that accountability. Coaches don't let your guys slide just because they have some talent. Because I promise you, you want to know if they're going to quit on you in the off season. You don't want to get in the middle of a game and they shut it down on you. So if I get my best player out there and he doesn't feel like showing up to a workout, in my mind, I'm putting that in the bank for the fall. You can't rely on somebody who won't show up.
That's great. I'm happy to hear that, because that's some of the struggles we're having here is getting kids to our weight room. We're remodeling it, renovating it, making it a better place, but our numbers are small, and we have kids that are, they're not going to show up to a single weight. They're going to expect to come on in as seniors and, expect to play, and we just can't have that happen in sports anymore. High school sports have changed so much in the past few years where, maybe 10, 15 years ago, the weight room wasn't as important as it is today.
Mm-hmm. And now it's the biggest thing, because it's more so than getting strong or anything else. You learn injury prevention. And so there's so many things. We work on landing drills. I was at a school for 5 years, and within that 5-year period, we had 0 non-contact ACL injuries. And all of that was because we put a focus on how to start, how to stop, how to land, how to jump in turf. And we put a vested interest in protecting our players. And there's a reason why for 5 years, 0 non-contact ACL injuries. I think there were 2 total, and it was all based on hits taken the wrong way. But nothing where you stick your foot in the ground, or you don't know how to land, or your quad's not strong enough, or your hamstring isn't strong enough to withstand the landing.
Now, what is the culture overall as far as in sport, in season? Your different coaches within the entire organization. I'm going to guess that you guys are all pretty vested together, and that would probably be with that full-time strength and conditioning coach.
Absolutely. All the guys, we share a common goal. We spend a lot of time together. One thing that's really cool that we do in Texas, we have the Texas High School Coaches Association. And so think the AFCA on a smaller level, on a Texas scale. But we get big time speakers coming in, and it's something that all of our schools, we have a governing body called the UIL, much like the NCAA for college sports, and they are right in line with the Texas High School Coaches Association. So here on the 20th, we'll be all gathered in Houston in this huge coaches convention. So people coming from every part of the state to learn football. We have regional meetings, so we meet regionally. We have some great speakers. I know PJ Fleck will be one. There's usually NFL guys. Houston Texans strength and conditioning coach is speaking this year. And it's been going on for, I don't know, probably the last 50 years or so. But it's a time for coaches to get together, share ideas, and it just helps grow the sport. You can tell how important it is for just not even just football, but being a coach in the state of Texas, that they want to help grow you as an individual, and that helps the culture within your staff, because you're going together and you're continuing learning together.
Now we're under the last 10 minutes of the show here, Coach. Take us into Friday night, or do you guys play on Saturdays?
Most games are Friday nights. We do have some Thursday night games, and we do have some Saturday afternoon games, but we're known for Friday night lights, so that's a good place to set the stage.
All right, let's talk about those Friday night lights. I mean, take us to what Texas football is truly all about.
All right. Well, a typical Friday for a Texas football player and coach. You go through your normal classes. We always press education first. The way things are worked out in Texas, we usually have an athletic period. And during that period, it's just like a class period, but all of our athletes meet together. And for the most part, it's at the end of the day. So after we've had our pep rally, while the other students go back to class, all the athletes go gather around and we meet. And depending how far the game is, whether it's a home game or an away game, we load on a bus. We have a pregame meal together at a set location. And then we get into our meetings. We have an offensive meeting, a defensive meeting, a special teams meeting. We have team chaplains that come talk to our team and give us some encouraging words before we hit the field, get taped up. And this is probably 2 to 3 hours before game time. As we start getting locked in for the game, the music starts going. Once the gates open, the seats already start filling. The bands are there. The fans start pouring in. One of my first just regular season games, I was at Guyer High School. We were playing against Allen, and they had just opened a brand new stadium. It's one of those things, if you Google it, it's probably one of the biggest high school stadiums in the world. But there's 3 more just like it now in Texas. But as we walk in, it's standing room only. If you didn't get a ticket, you probably can't get in, and the stadium holds about 25,000. Walk out, crowd is roaring. We have just probably 15 to 20 Division I Power 5 athletes between both teams on either side of the ball. And it's one of the most physical, impressive football games you've ever been in. You have coaches who can't even hear through their headset because the video boards are showing everything going on. When you're calling plays, you have to cover your mouth. And the intensity is like no other. It's the biggest exhilaration ever. And if you come out victorious, you're floating on the high for about 2 or 3 days. But what happens is you go right back to work. So game ends at 11. We're back at the field house, and by 12, we have food brought in. The huddle film is loading. We're breaking it down. Kids come back in on Saturday morning to watch the film and get treatment. And then Sunday afternoon, we're game planning for the next opponent. So you have to have a short memory. And then all that build up through the week happens again. You get that big, exhilarating feeling on Friday night, and you do it over again. And once you get in the routine, it seems like from August to December was just a blink. It had your years half over, and then before you know it, you've been coaching 5 years and then 10 years. And that exhilarating feeling never goes away.
That sounds exciting.
My hair's standing up. Oh, yeah. I'm not going to lie to you.
that sounds like quite the environment. That just sounds like such an experience to be a coach down there, in the biggest on the biggest stage in the biggest sport that Texas has to offer. That sounds like quite the experience.
Absolutely. And the big thing is, I'm speaking of my coaching experience at a 6A high school, the largest classification. Well, I played at a 2A high school. I grew up in a town with less than 1,000 people, and it's the same feeling, which is unbelievable. But the whole town shuts down, and the stadium's a lot smaller, but it's still filled. And the same exhilarating hair standing on the back of your neck. I can remember our band playing our school song and the national anthem, and it never fails. One tear goes down my eye, and it's time to play. And the feeling is the same. So the biggest thing somebody ever told me was my college coach. And it was when he was recruiting me. I guess it worked because I went to a very small college. But he said, big time is where you're at. When you get there, the feeling doesn't change. At the end of the day, it's football. And if it's what you love, it's what you love. And I love it.
I'm telling you, we're down to our last 5 minutes. So unless you have a question, I do have another question I want to talk about. But Coach, tell everybody how they can follow you, get a hold of you, and obviously check out that podcast.
Yes, absolutely. Twitter's probably the best way to get a hold of me. My DM remains open, so if you ever have questions, anything like that, you can reach out to me at iCoach Nash. And then also my podcast Twitter is at iCoach Podcast. The podcast is a new venture that I just one day I said, we need a voice for Texas high school football, and not from just the media guys, because we get a ton of coverage, and it's great guys that do the coverage. But what's it really like to be a Texas high school coach? And I sent some emails out, wanted to get some feedback on who'd be interested in joining, and my inbox is overflowing. I've only released 2 episodes so far, but I have about 10 interviews I'm sitting on just putting together. So it's going to be awesome. I know I'll get really, really busy here in about 3 weeks. I'm going to try to put all of those out. But please follow me and questions about anything. I love mentoring young coaches. I love helping coaches with any type of X/No question. Just because I've been on both sides of the ball. I've coordinated offense. I've been a co-coordinator on defense. I've coordinated special teams. I've coordinated strength and conditioning. Been an associate head coach. And when I say I've coached every position, I've literally coached every position. So I just have some insight. If you ever have questions, let me know. Yeah,
now we're down to the last 3 minutes, which it goes by so fast. Coach Nash, we'd love to get you back on maybe in a month or so and talk about X's and O's.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to. That's my favorite thing to talk about. You might want to block off 2 to 3 hours because once I get going, oh my goodness. But
that sounds great. We appreciate you so much for taking this time to interview with us. I mean, this has been a great experience to just hear the perspective, to hear someone else outside the state of Iowa, talk about why they got into coaching, why they love it, and then just some of the major differences and some of the things you could see if you went down and watched some Texas high school football. So thank you for joining us. This has been a great experience, very eye-opening for us here and hopefully for our listeners as well, and we greatly appreciate it.
Coach Nash, if you wouldn't mind, stay on the line here and as we wrap it up for this evening.
Absolutely.
All right. You've been listening to Coaching, Culture, and Athletics with Coach Swanson and Coach Banks on the Coaching, Culture, and Athletics podcast. Be sure to follow us at CCA Culture on Twitter and, follow us, Coaching, Culture, and Athletics on Facebook. For everybody, good night.